When testing out new, old IBM PCs in my collection, there are a few games that I always come to for benchmarking purposes. One of them is Silpheed, designed in Japan by Game Arts in 1986 and ported by Sierra Online for Western audiences in 1988. As stated on the relentlessly radical box art, it's from the same designers as the game Thexter, which was the first huge Japanese hit by Game Arts for Sierra in 1987. Like Thexter, Silpheed is a sci-fi action shooter that was originally developed on the NEC PC 8801 Japanese home computer, and soon made its way into other Japanese home machines like the Fujitsu FM7. But after the widespread success of Thexter, Sierra seriously started looking at other games in Game Arts' catalog, and Silpheed was soon ported to the Apple IIgs, TRS-80 color computer, and the focus of this review, IBM PC-compatible PCs running MS-DOS. Besides the fact that the game is actually pretty fun, there were two really big selling points for it. One was the fact that it had 9 original musical compositions for a variety of different sound devices. This was one of the earliest PC games to use music as a selling point. And remember, this was 1988 when PCs weren't exactly known for great sound. Sierra was at the top of their game then, and it was games like Silpheed which really helped push the PC sound card revolution. It was so impressive that they even sold cassette tapes featuring the game's music to try and sell the very sound cards the game made use of.
This 32-voice synthesizer has 128 preset sounds, ranging from orchestrated strings to hard-driving drums. Listen to the MT32 as it drives the explosive action of Silpheed.
The second big deal was the graphics. They looked great already, but they also used 3D polygons for much of the gameplay. Strangely, this fact is not made a big deal of on the box. In fact, there are only a couple of screenshots of static screens. Just judging by these, you might think it's a space exploration game of some kind, but that is most definitely not the case. Nope, according to the manual, this is one of those games where it is the distant future. Humanity is going to be destroyed unless you, and only you, do something ridiculously awesome and awesomely ridiculous with some unfinished prototype of a new ridiculous-awesome spaceship. And the story is riddled with names and designations that are impossible to pronounce because they're alien. Yes, even though the plot may as well be non-existent, you will absolutely still need to look at the manual in order to play the game. That's because it has Sierra's patented manual lookup copy protection scheme, this time by identifying enemy spacecraft whenever you start the game. There's also lots of information regarding the game's levels, power-ups, and even details on many of the spaceships, so it's still a good thing to have even if you crack the copy protection. On starting the game, you're greeted by a very bizarre set of introduction text, which just barely qualifies as understandable, and some very impressive arcade-like animated attract mode sequences. Yeah, so for the time, this is pretty much awesome, especially if you had a PC that was fast enough to animate this smoothly, and having a sound card so you could actually hear the music is totally awesome too. As the game's music is really impressive on everything from the Game Blaster to the ad-lib to, of course, the MT32. I'll be using the ad-lib for most of the gameplay in this video, but I'll throw some MT32 tracks in here as well. Once you press enter, you'll immediately start the game and receive a greeting from Zakolite, Emperor of the Universe. Admittedly not the best digitized speech I've ever heard, especially since it comes through the PC speaker. In fact, an audiophile might be satisfied with the local drive-thru in comparison to this, but maybe it's supposed to sound alien and garbled. Then the gameplay starts and you're dropped right into the action, shooting away at anything that moves. It still uses PC speaker noise for sound effects, but you can turn that off if you like, and if you have a sound card, you can enjoy the game's epic soundtrack. Naturally, you use the arrow keys or numpad to move, and the spacebar shoots, and there's also joystick support in case you don't like keyboards. The controls themselves are, well, solid as they could be, and the perspective really gives it a unique feel. It's uncommon to see some sort of depth in an overhead shooter, so instead of like other ones, this almost has a kind of over-the-shoulder feel, so enemies fall in from the distance and get larger as they come closer. This really makes for some tight situations when enemies are both close and far away, and it's a really impressive effect for PCs at the time, especially since it uses 3D polygons for the objects. Otherwise, it's pretty standard fare. Pound away at the fire button, avoid enemies, and collect power-ups to upgrade your weapons, shields, and ship integrity. Thankfully, this isn't one of those one-hit-and-you're-dead games. You have a life bar, which you can replenish during gameplay. Otherwise, it would be rather impossible. In fact, it's still rather impossible for someone of my skill level, but that's okay. That's better than it being too easy. Once you pass the first level, you'll be taken to an upgrade screen, which is another rather unique feature of the time. You can choose from several different types of weapons for both left and right sides of your ship. Then it's on to the next level to do it all over again. The levels do follow a sequential order, so you'll be able to memorize things in order to advance your game. And there are 4 different level types: space, above planets, in fortress, and cartoon cutscenes followed by asteroids, each with different scenery, hazards, and power-up options. There are 20 levels in all, and you'll be hard-pressed to actually see them all just because of its ever-increasing difficulty. After about level 5, there is a mad difficulty spike, and it just gets harder from there. Thankfully, you can start back where you died if your game ends, so it's not as absurd as many shooters I've played. And that's also good because once you get the hang of the first several levels, you'll probably get sick of them after playing them for the millionth time. On the whole, it really is just a solid arcade shoot-'em-up experience, and I'd really recommend it to anyone with a vintage PC of the era. Although I feel it's worth mentioning that I got the best results on an AT range PC with 8 MHz or faster. Now really, you can run it on any PC as long as it has CGA graphics and 512K of RAM at least, but on the original PC and XT range of computers, you're gonna run into some slowdown. Now, how it compares to the original NEC version, I don't know. I've never played that one, but judging by the screenshots and YouTube videos, it seems to be pretty close. I do know that the DOS and 2GS versions are awesome, and even the Coco port seems to be pretty decent, although with the expected limitations due to hardware. There was also a Sega CD game under the same name of Silpheed in 1993, which, despite having the exact same title and sharing much of the gameplay as an entirely different game. So for your experience of the original Silpheed, I definitely recommend the MS-DOS or 2GS versions, because they are friggin' rad. And if you have the original game in a PC 8801, I hate you because that is totally awesome. So whether you're into really old 3D graphics, awesome game music, arcade-style home video games, shoot-'em-ups, games that I think are awesome, or all of the above, Silpheed is a must-play.